is up, my ninjas? I'm Strydent, and welcome to my review of the Mezco 112 Collective Modern Wonder Woman. This one is a long time coming, roughly 2 years. It might be a little bit more since we first saw this thing at Toy Fair. And, she is a thing of beauty, but I have a lot to say about this figure because the weight was ridiculous, no updates. Mezco has changed a lot over the years, and I have some theories as to why they've changed so much, but for the amount of money and the amount of time, it's not necessarily reflected in the figure. And that's what you're going to hear as the sentiment throughout this review, because there is so much that I have come to expect from a Mezco figure experience that is missing here. And other people have pointed out some of these things in some of the reviews, but I've noticed with all the coverage of this figure, they gloss over a lot. It's as if aesthetics by themselves, a pretty figure is enough. And, despite whatever the cost of the figure might be, despite whatever the company usually offers, it's enough because, to many people, because it looks good, and that's not enough for me. So you've listened to everybody else. Now it's my turn, at the podium, and I'm going to give it to you real, fucking raw. No fucking cap, no filter like I always do. And you're going to get an idea of what you're going to expect from this figure. So, as usual with me, it's a little bit longer. So sit back, relax, and prepare yourself for the rawness. So before I jump completely into the sculpt and paint, I was on vacation when I shot this review, so I did not have my usual setup. So if you noticed, I was using a lot of natural light. It's warmer, and it looks good. I mean, it looks a little bit different, but it looks good to me. It looked good enough to me, to continue on with the review. I actually did more than one review at this makeshift review station. So, that's the reason for the difference in lighting, and kind of a little bit less of the photos. But anyway, let's jump into the sculpt and paint. So this is a beautiful figure. The sculpt work is nuts because it's a Mezco figure. You already know how they do. So much detail, paint, sculpt work is beautifully done, but the two together complement each other very well. There's nothing really lacking in the paint department, and I've found that with these guys, there rarely is anything lacking in the paint department. And I know you sometimes hear and see reviewers and customizers bitch and moan about some of the paints, but I remember on the vintage Wonder Woman or the classic Wonder Woman, her I think some people pointed out the head and then the neck and everything were just slightly different in tone. You don't have that issue here. Everything matches. The golds are very vibrant, which I love. The reds are a little bit duller than what we saw in the promo images and what we saw at Toy Fair, I want to say in 2019. Yeah, she still looks good. There's a lot of intricate detail. The armor bits are kind of nice as far as the details go. The neck piece and the shoulder, and bicep pieces look really good too. They really set off and complement the bustier piece or the torso armor. The little details on the torso armor are really nice too. I mean, it's one of those things where you either dig the aesthetic or you don't. If you've been digging the aesthetic so far, then this is going to fall right in line with that. The overall look is very much in line with what you see in the current DC films, and they even muted the colors, like I said, as far as the red goes, to kind of match that, and they darkened the blue to kind of match the films version, but they took liberties, you know, just enough to make it stand out on its own. The white is crisp with the star and the little accents around it. The gold is nice, and the only spot where there's white is on the little skirt pieces. They've replaced all the white stripes with gold because it made sense. The white should have been like the most accenty of accents, instead of being this weird kind of like splotchy kind of effect throughout the costume, you know. So yeah, I dig the change. It's something I would have done. I tried to be very close to the original with my own work, and I left the white on the boots and stuff, but you know, but the weapons very well detailed, as you can see. I don't have any criticism for the colors used. I don't have any criticism for the coverage. I don't have any criticism for, you know, areas where it's, you know, clean versus sloppy. Mine is consistently awesome across the board. I love that the theory, or the direction they went with the colors of the character, the color scheme, carry on into the weapons, but in a subtle kind of way. You don't have to worry about things being overpowering. The gold is like, it's the perfect gold. It's royal enough, and it's bright enough and shiny enough to give you the idea that Diana is not just some random warrior. She's royalty, you know. The effect parts, well done as well. I do have gripes with them, which I will get to shortly. But well, I have a gripe, I should say. But yeah, they're painted well. The transparent parts for the impact and motion of the bullet pieces looks really good, especially, you know, when you pull off a kind of the effect I'm doing here, where you have the you know, extreme foreground, then, you know, your kind of okay mid-ground and a really clear background, or vice versa. It works really well. For the most part, you are able to reenact a lot of things that you've seen before, and I'm gonna get a little bit more into articulation, and she does move a lot better than past Wonder Woman figures, where you can actually get the, you know, her fists in front of one another, her forearms crossing the way that Wonder Woman often does. So, you know, they've been paying attention and listening to us when we complain about this sort of thing. For me, a big plus is just the simple fact that she looks so good in action. All of these 112 Collective figures look so good in action. It makes it fun to pose them and to explain to people, you know, what makes them worthwhile. Because, you know, a lot of figures look good, but then you pose them and that's when it falls apart. You know what I mean? And granted, some of these figures are like Marvel Legends, and they're $20 figures or less. Actually, they're mostly $20 figures. You kind of expect some of that, you know, with those figures. For these, since they're slightly smaller, you know, they're like half-sized Hot Toys, you expect a certain level of engineering to allow the characters to look natural when you pose them, and that's what I like with this. The Figuarts Wonder Woman from BVS, or from Wonder Woman, her hair got in the way. Here she has more hair, but sculpted in a way that it doesn't get in the way. You can turn her head, you can even have her look slightly up. So, you know, there's improvements made to the articulation and, you know, to the sculpt to allow for articulation, which all in all, with the awesome sculpt and paint, it just gives you a quality look to the figure. Now, I was afraid too that, like, you know, she wouldn't be able to do high kicks, and that like some things would wear out because of the fact that you're moving joints and they may rub or something like that. I mean, it looks like they thought of everything when it comes to that sort of thing. You don't have any issues with, you know, areas of the sculpt butting up against other areas of the sculpt, creating issues. You know what I mean? Instead, she just moves the way she's supposed to. The joints are very like moderately stiff, so you don't have to worry about them not holding a pose. They will hold the poses that you put her in. And you know, the paint in the places where it needs to be organic, it's organic, and in the spots where it needs to be, you know, more technical and more utilitarian, you know what I mean? It needs to fit a specific purpose. It does, you know. The metals look like metals, the leathers look like leather, you know, and the greaves feel like armor, and that's all you need, you know what I mean? You don't need anything else. You need everything to feel legit like what it's supposed to be. And I don't know, they're a master. Whoever they have sculpting these is clearly a master of getting that shit across before we move into utilizing soft goods. All right, the accessories. She comes with a nice selection of accessories. You know, you have the stand as you usually do. You'll have her spear, you know, her sword, her axe, several hands, an extra head, the armor bits, the cape, the effect pieces, the shield. I think I might have already said the shield. I'm just repeating myself. You got the it's 3 pairs of hands, you know, open hands, and 2 different sets of holding things hands. You know, the handle for the handles are all about the same. It's if you want to have her holding weapons in both hands. The stand is what you should expect by now, and then of course you have, you know, the figure, but the stand is great. I like these stands because you have some options with them. You have the peg if you just want them to stand up on the stand, or you have the arm to hold them, you know, in the air if you want them to be doing something up in the air. The peg is easy to keep track of. You can, you know, when you take the arm out, you can just put that peg in and just leave it there just to be safe, or you can put all of it inside of your bag. Which I don't have displayed on here, but there is the little Figma baggy type deal. And then of course, like I said, you have the figure. Figure is wonderful. The figure looks great. We've already talked about the aesthetics of the figure and how it works, but let's get into her accessories. Like I said, she's got a sword, shield, an axe, and a spear, as well as armor bits and extra hands. All of them are sculpted well. I had no slop anywhere, not on the hands, not on the shield, not on the axe, sword, or spear. I was kind of happy about this because there are times where it's like paint, they skimped on paint, you know what I mean? Or like the materials used kind of suck. We didn't have that with this. The materials are nice and sturdy. It's not bendy like Blade's sword. But let's start with the spear. Spear is beautiful. I love the idea of Wonder Woman using a spear because, I mean, if you watch 300, before BVS, that was where my mind was. And I had a spear because one came with someone in the DCUC. I think it came with Hawkman or Hawkgirl, and I a lot of times would pose Wonder Woman with the spear and her shield because, I mean, she's, you know, Greek. She's practiced all those fighting styles, so it just made sense for her to have it. But as you can see, it's a thick spear with cool sculpting all throughout. They didn't skimp and make it flat and just have the details on the 2 ends. The wood detailing is really nicely done throughout the length of the spear. It looks sturdy. The wrappings look really nice and royal, and there's this cool motif throughout where you see the gold bands at the ends of the wraps and then at the very tail end of the spear itself. The axe is beautiful. Ever since the DCUC one came with an axe, it's been one of those things I always thought was cool. If you ever saw or read Batman Superman Apocalypse, Batman was fighting with an axe. Several of the Amazons were fighting with axes. It just seems like something that should be in Wonder Woman's arsenal. And the details on this are pretty nice too. Same motif as the previous weapon. The handle and everything even continues all the same details all the way down to the very tail end of it, and it just looks brutal and powerful and beautiful at the same time, which are all things that, you know, Wonder Woman embodies. So it's nice to have this. You know, you get a different kind of feel with Diana holding a fucking battle axe. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't feel pretty. It doesn't feel soft. It feels brutal and powerful. And, you know, these are all things that, like I said, Wonder Woman embodies these things. I don't understand how sometimes, in a lot of cases, Wonder Woman gets overlooked, or Wonder Woman gets treated as just, oh, she's the girl on the team. And it's like, she's such a beast. How do you ignore how hardcore she is? And of course, here is her sword. I like that this blade, there are elements of a lot of the swords. I want to say the two that you saw in the film, you know, one of which was the God Slayer. And then there's just like the standard, you know, Zephos kind of feel to it, or just like a Greek straight sword, which I like. And you know, of course, the blade has that cool detailing going throughout. It almost looks like Marvel style detailing, even though this is something that like many of the Mezco figures have. Mezco or Marvel in the films, in the MCU, they do a lot of panel lining throughout the armor, and that's what that reminds me of. But the sword itself, it's a nice thick sword. It's a decent length. So, you know, if you want to have her actually utilizing the length of the sword while fighting, you can do that. The detailing all the way to the hilt is beautiful. You like I said, you have the panel lining, and then also when you get like go in and look closely at the hilt, you've got the eagle, and you've got the cool detailing going down the handle that you've seen on all her previous weapons. I love it. And I mean, it's to the point where Wonder Woman has to be, she has to be presented with her blade. I mean, it's just, I mean, after BVS and introducing her that way, it just has to be. You know what I'm saying? Like, she has to have this blade. And it's a good version. It looks good even with some of your other Wonder Woman figures. I tried it with some of the others. I didn't take pictures. I just I'd brought others because there is a comparison portion, of course, and I wanted to see how she looked with it. And you know, even if you put this in the hands of like the movie figures, it looks good. Lastly, of course, we have her shield. Now this shield definitely takes cues from the one from the recent, you know, DC EU films, and you know, I don't mind that. Something needed to happen where the designers start paying attention to the cultural cues of some of these characters. And you see she's got that Greek or Greco-Roman patterning going around the outside of the, you know, well, it's going out, it's almost the outside of the shield itself. It's about the third ring in. It's a standard shield with the you know, the handle and then the band that goes around your forearm. It's real easy to get her hands on it, you know, slip her hand into the band and then, you know, put the hand on the strap, or you could just put the hand on the strap and then slide her forearm in. But it looks good, it looks powerful, it has details that are familiar, like I said, from things you've seen in, you know, versions of Wonder Woman you've seen in other media. And yeah, the paint looks on point. There's very subtle kind of nicks and scratches because it looks like it's made out of a powerful mystical metal, so it doesn't easily chip, it doesn't easily have, you know, sword gashes and shit in there, and I love that, you know. But like I said, it's really easy to put on her hands and it's functional, you know what I mean. I dig that a lot. That's what I look for with these figures, you know, form and function coming together to give you a beautiful end result. Lastly, we have her beautiful cape. This thing is awesome. It's got a wire going through it. It just drapes the right way. It is a little thin. As you can see light going through it, but it sets the figure off nicely. So, you know, it all works to benefit the whole, and I'm loving it hard. Okay, but now it's time to get down to the nitty gritty. These are the problems, issues, and nitpicks that I have with this figure. So first, we're going to start with the lasso. The lasso actually is a separate piece. You have two different versions of the lasso, and they clip on right here. There's a loop, and it pegs on. The loop is made of material, the same material as the skirt flaps, and it's harder towards the top, and it just pegs onto that piece. They should have made it out of a harder material altogether, because I could see over time, you clipping that flap. Even in a short time, I've only unclipped it maybe once or twice since I got this figure, and it comes off on its own. Sometimes while you're posing her and you have her in more like wider legged stances, it starts to move off and come off. So if it was made of a harder material, it would have snapped and stayed, or maybe if they had a different kind of mechanism, it would have just stayed in place. So, from time to time, depending on the pose, it's good. But, if you're moving her around a decent amount, you're playing with this figure, that shit's gonna come loose. And I'm not a fan of that. Even just the loop itself being made of the basic flap material, that's not cool. The gauntlets. There is a magnet inside of her forearms underneath the gauntlets. The problem with this magnet is where it's positioned, because if you pay attention, bullets usually are coming at her. She puts her fists up in front, so the impact should be on the front of her forearm. Instead, it's on the top of her forearm on both sides. And they didn't put one in the shield. They didn't put a magnet or a piece of metal or whatever into the shield, so you can't use them on there. And I thought for sure you could, but they should have put either a cylindrical magnet in her forearm so that the whole forearm, from the gauntlet or bracer to her, the top of the bracer to the end of the bracer, can actually receive the impact, magnetic impact pieces, because like I said, they're held up with magnets. Instead, it hits the top, and you can't really twist it because the bracers are not separate, so that you can get it to look like it's forward. You just got to angle your camera or your shot so that the impact pieces or effect parts are sitting on top and it looks like it's in the front. Next up is the armor pieces. Now the neck armor is beautiful because once it's in place, it's in place. Take the head off, you slot down the armor, and it sits. But what's on her arms, if you look closely, you can see it's not even a tight fit. So like you move her around and it just slides all over the place. And the clips themselves it's not like a tight, form-fitting clip. I thought she would have had additional arms with sculpted armor on them, so that way, you don't have this problem. This shit is whack. I mean, this is like Kenner era clip-on armor. You know what I mean? And this is an $85+ figure. There's no reason why they should be that kind of lame with the engineering of this part. But it goes back to what I was saying in the beginning of the video. There's a lot of areas where Mezco has been skimping because they know they have a built-in fan base and they don't have to try as hard. But anyway, let's get back to the the review itself. The armor bits. The armor looks good. It's like I said, it's a separate piece that just snaps on to the figure, and it sits on top of her shoulders and holds on at the bicep. It looks good. I don't have any complaints really, aside from the issues and nitpicks that I pointed out. It looks good. There is also another piece of fabric on her. There's fabric pieces on the right and the left. One for the lasso and then the other for the sword. I feel there should have been a sheath or a plastic piece that was hanging down so you could slot that in. You'll see that over time, the sharpness of the blade, because it is fairly sharp, especially at the front end of it, the very front end, it's going to wear that piece out. But once you utilize it, it looks good. It looks really good. Few Wonder Woman figures have anywhere for you to put the lasso and put the the sword, if she even comes with the sword. So I got to give them props for even including that detail. And when you don't have anything in there, because it's made of the same material as the flaps and it's the exact same color as the flaps in the skirt, you can barely tell anything's there. You know, if you're not really looking, you know, you're not really going to see it. And now if you're looking for it, you will see it, especially on the right hand side for the sword, because it hangs down underneath the belt, whereas the other side where the lasso is loops up to the belt, and you can see it sitting over top of the gold. The last piece is the extra head. It's just her scowling and frowning a little bit more, and you know, teeth bared, and it looks great. It looks great. You saw it before in the pictures where she was fighting Cheetah. As usual, I mean, no issues here at all. This shit looks fucking phenomenal, you know? So yeah, great stuff. All right, let's get to this articulation. Now, I almost didn't do it, but I figured, you know what? Let me try that with her. So her head freely moves. It's on a ball joint. You already know what you're getting with Mezco. There is no neck, joint. As you can see, the cape is removable by just popping the head off. What else? Side to side action. So head has complete range of motion, no neck, anything, and the hair slightly gets in the way for like really looking up. So like if she's flying or something like that, you're gonna have to make the torso do the work, but she can look down fine. Her arm, the swivel is, she has a universal at the shoulder and a swivel at the elbow. It's not hard to move. In the past, I've had other figures like Catwoman where it was kind of hard to move. Her hand, it's a swivel and a peg, and it can do the up and down, the in and out, and it can swivel at the wrist. I am a little bit frustrated about the lack of range of motion at the elbow in comparison to, you know, some other Mezco figures, you know, mainly the male Mezco figures. And the same goes for her knees. She goes a little bit more than 90 degrees, but, you know, it's not like with the males. Like I said before, you look at Superman and, you know, he can totally, you know, curl, you know, and if you want him to block, so you need to block the side of his head, you could easily do it. But you see how it looks more natural with him, not so much with her. It kind of just looks like a figure, you know, like a toy. The same goes for their knees. And this has been a thing that people have been pointing out for years. You'd think by now they would figure it out. Figuarts make skinnier figures, and they always have those things included. So I don't necessarily get what the I don't really get what the issue is here. Like it gets in the way of a lot of poses that you could do, especially when you want to have them like kneel down. It's harder when they can only go, you know, a little bit over 90 degrees. In some cases, it's hard in general because of the measurements that they use for the thighs. So, you know, you kind of got to have them kind of leaned over a little bit. I mean, if you notice, try it with your Transformers versus your, you know, most of your humanoid figures, and you'll see what I'm talking about. With humanoid figures, you get this. With Transformers, you get the right thing. But I figured I would demonstrate for you so you guys could, you know, get what I'm getting at. You can see what I'm getting at. There's a lot of figures that can't do something this simple, and yet, you know, all you have to do is measure the thighs properly, you know, the thighs and the legs properly, and then you also got to just make sure that the bend is a double jointed bend, you know, at the knee, because that's what knees actually do, you know. But the problem is, for whatever reason, Mezco just is not doing this stuff. I don't know if they just don't give a fuck. I don't know if, you know, they just figure, oh, we've got a built-in fan base so we can get away with it. Like, if she didn't have that little piece of her boot, then she wouldn't balance properly. And if you notice with Superman, even though he's leaning, he can go deeper if necessary on that bend because of the double jointed knee. So, you know, they need to stop screwing around and actually include that, because these figures are expensive enough and they're raising their prices, but they're still giving you less of a figure, you know, in certain, you know, situations, and I'm not a fan of that. It shouldn't be like this. You should be getting a full bend. Like, how is it that a McFarlane figure, which is 20 bucks, can do this with no problem? Deep bend, you even have toe articulation, and look at how natural that bend looks. You know what I mean? Like, there's no excuse. But you know, you're gonna have your naysayers and you're gonna have your consumers that pop up and try to come up with excuses for why one makes sense and one doesn't, and blah blah blah, and whatever. Use your eyes, use your own base level logic, and look at it, and you can tell for yourself. One looks like the way you would kneel down, provided you still have the way you would take a knee, provided you have that range of motion. Because I know people get arthritis and all kinds of things, and you lose range of motion as you get older. But one looks natural, the other one looks like a toy trying to, you know, do a natural pose. So, you know, judge for yourself in that respect. The knee, like I said, single jointed knee. There is like a little bit of a, there's actually a, I'm sorry, I don't know why I said little bit, but there is a thigh swivel, which is cool. She does, I mean, it's not that she doesn't look cool with the articulation that she does have. I want to make sure you guys understand that, because if you're looking at it, you can see that there is a range of motion there that allows for you to get some fairly natural looking stuff going on, but like it could be more natural, and that's the point that I'm getting at, you know. And that just about does it for her articulation. Like I said, the knees are and the elbows are the trouble spots, but everything else, it's good, and it's a little bit more range than what we've seen on previous female Mezco figures. So, you know, I got to give them props for what they were able to pull off here. So here she is with a bunch of other Wonder Woman figures, past, present, and future, or past slightly sooner and, you know, just a little bit ago. You can see side by side she has the most in common with the movie figures. That's the Figuarts version. I love it. It works. She's bigger, which is nice. This is how she looks with two other Mezco figures, so you can have your Trinity. She looks great with them. I prefer this modern Henry Cavill suit, you know, Superman suit for my Superman, so he's like my default these days. But look at them. They look great together, you know, with the cape, without the cape. She looks awesome. I'm kind of blown away with how aesthetically she fits in so many different situations. I mean, right now on my shelf, I have her in my comic display. So I've got a comic book Superman, like standard, you know, tights. I think it's the more Ed McGuinness style one from Public Enemies. And then I have that Batman, and I have her, and I have a couple other DC UCs with her, and she looks fine. You know, she fits perfectly. She has more detail than they do. It just works. So yeah, this is a win, 100%. I'm loving the aesthetics. I knew I would. So we're at the bottom line, my favorite part. I mean, it's pretty simple. If you waited a long time for this figure, there are aspects of the figure that do not live up to the expectation. But if you were a fan of the design from day one, you're gonna love the figure. If you look at a lot of the reviews, people didn't point out a lot of what's wrong because they love the look of the figure so much, and that's typically how, you know, things go on YouTube. That's par for the course. People like to buy shit. They don't like to think critically about the shit they buy. You know what I mean? That's typically how it works. You come to me, I give you the critical analysis, and that's the critical analysis, you know? She's a beautiful looking figure with a couple issues, but overall, it's a really well done figure, and it's worth the you know, the money spent. She looks good with the other figures. She's pretty sturdy. There are some slight improvements over the previous female figures, you know, that Mezco has produced thus far, and you know, it's just, you know, she's a good in-between comic and movie design. You know what I mean? She takes cues from the movie and has the integrity of the design from the comics, you know, that everyone's used to. So, you know, if that sounds like your bag, then, you know, this is definitely going to be for you. If you are strictly comic, stay away from this. If you are strictly movie, You know, again, stay away from this. But if you like, you know, the kind of sensibility that they're going for that's in between one and the other, then this is straight up for you. That is my story, and I'm sticking to it. So I've been Strydent. This has been my look at the Mezco 1/12 Collective Modern Wonder Woman, and I think she is about a B plus. She's a great figure, you know. If this is your bag, like I said, look into getting a hold of her. I don't know how easy that will be considering the way things have been lately. I pre-ordered her back in the end of 2019, I think, when she went up for, or maybe it was mid 2019 when she went up for pre-order, but it's been a while, and this seems to be par for the course. But anyway, that's it for me. You guys have all been great. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And yeah, that's it for me. You've been great. Peace outside.